Going into Mexican Independence Day, I'm going to pull off the greatest live sporting event ever done in the sphere.
You also said that it's costing upwards of $20 million to produce the event.
$20 million on the nose.
Well, I say this every year. I mean, every year I'm like, how do we beat this year? Going into 25, how do we beat 24? We always seem to do it.
Several months later.
Okay, yeah, so there's no UFC pay-per-view in September this year.
No September. Oh, Noche? Yeah.
Yeah, there's no pay-per-view.
Yeah.
What in the MacGuffin is that?
If you've been a fan for any amount of time, you know that fight cards are fragile things, and we have seen them fall apart time and time again. It's one of the many heartbreaks you have to get used to if you want to watch this sport. But sometimes these events fall apart so spectacularly, so insanely, that they don't just crumble, they cease to exist entirely. And sometimes they bring whole promotions crashing down with them. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and these are the 10 craziest event cancellations in MMA history. Number 10. Body slammed. By UFC 10, the walls were closing in on parent company SEG. The federal government, by way of John McCain, had started a hell of a campaign against cage fighting, and President Bob Meyerowitz was having trouble booking venues because states kept banning the sport.
It's not sports, it's not entertainment, it's some kind of bastardized thing in the middle.
UFC 10 was meant to be the return of the tournament format and had bad aces like Don Fry, Mark Coleman, and Gary Goodridge competing in it. The show was meant to take place in Providence, Rhode Island, the birthplace of DJ Pauly D.
This hair ain't moving, my dude.
But it was not meant to be for UC. As was becoming customary, Meyerowitz had to stand in front of a judge and plead the UFC's case wherever they went, and in Rhode Island, they hit possibly the dumbest roadblock possible.
We were fighting every minute for the life of this organization, the life of this sport. We come back the next day and the judge says, you can do it here in Rhode Island as long as you follow the rules of the WWE. My lawyer gets up and says, Your Honor, WWE is not real. And the judge says, I've been watching it for 20 years. It is real.
Here comes Duke the Dumpster Drosy. Take it out. It's
It is real.
It's honestly amazing that this sport survived, let alone now. Unable to secure a venue in Providence, the UFC did what they often do, move everything to the south. And so the new UFC 10 would take place in Birmingham, Alabama. As a result of the increased pressure, Meyerowitz and SEG made a big push to get the sport legalized in New York to legitimize mixed martial arts. And they succeeded until, well, number 9, Big Apple, 3 a.m. UFC 205 took place in New York after the ban on MMA was finally lifted in the state, and it's because the original version of the promotion tried to do UFC 12 in New York that the whole thing got banned in the first place. Actually, it wasn't really their fault. Believe it or not, they'd made good with the New York legislature, who legalized the sport in the state, with the understanding that they'd ease into doing cards in NYC itself. So to test the waters, they were set for UFC 12 in Niagara Falls. That was until a different promotion planned an event in Manhattan proper, and the state government defaulted on the whole idea. Now, they couldn't ban it fast enough for UFC 12, so they made all these insane stipulations, like the promotion had to resize their cage, which of course was not possible on short notice.
They wanted headgear. They wanted it to be in a boxing ring. The judge ruled that it's someone's life is in danger, so therefore, for the first time ever in the history of New York State, they're going to make a rule that it's an emergency rule to save someone's life. We are banned from New York State.
So they did the only thing they could do in those days. Literally in the middle of the night, they headed for the safe haven of Alabama, where nothing is illegal.
The airport was closing. I think it closed around midnight. They told us that the plane was overweight. We just physically took luggage out of the plane, out of the hold, and threw it onto the tarmac.
Shortly thereafter, the state of New York would formally ban MMA, even though they literally just legalized it, and that would stand for 22 years. Number 8, one last, Pride. In June of 2006, Pride FC lost their deal with Fuji TV, and they didn't know it yet, but they'd been dealt a fatal blow. It would just take some time to bleed out. The promotion would hold just 8 more events in total, but they had plans for more. Pride 34 was not meant to be the end, although it certainly felt like it. What had given people hope was the promotion's acquisition by Zuffa the month previous. The old Pride team that still existed was excited about a May event that would kick off an insanely epic lightweight Grand Prix that would be a crossover between UFC and Pride. Lightweight champion Sean Shirk, Matt freaking Hughes at lightweight, which good luck making the weight, Diego Sanchez, and they were joined by the likes of Gil Melendez, Aoki, Takagomi, Sakurai, Joachim Hansen, Ishida, and more. This thing was going to be an absolute monster if it happened. They even had posters made up for it. But Zuffa and Pride brass decided, well, this acquisition process is taking some time, and we can't rush our first event. We want it to be special, so we'll start the GP at a later date. And of course, that later date never came, and Pride was absorbed into the UFC. A year later, Pride's spiritual successor Dream would put on a lightweight GP, but it didn't have Matt Hughes, so who fucking cares? I'm kidding, it was good. Number 7, 3-card Monty. All right, this one's tricky, so stay with me. So, you know how UFC 196 was Connor versus Nate, and 197 was Jones versus OSP? Not as memorable, I know. Well, 197 was originally 196. At least, it was supposed to take place on that date in March. But it wasn't Jones versus OSP at the MGM Grand Garden. It was supposed to be this massive show headlined by the rematch between Cain Velasquez and Fabricio Verdum in front of 45,000 in Curitiba. But then, for some reason, the UFC pivoted.
Let's pivot.
So they canceled the Brazil idea altogether and moved the show to Vegas. But then, Cain versus Fabricio fell apart. So 196 was without a main event. So then the UFC was like, okay, 196 is too weak to be a pay-per-view. It's now a fight night.
Well, historically, the UFC has put on a big event the night before the Super Bowl, and this time around, unfortunately, due to injuries, we're left with UFC Fight Night 82.
And 197 is now 196. And a new card in April in Vegas is the new 197. I know, it's a big ass mess, but the important piece of information here is that the UFC had a big ass card in Brazil around the time of these 3 events that was supposed to be in a stadium and packed with all kinds of Brazilian stars, but it fell apart and never happened, and we got the 3 events that we got out of it instead.
Connor's not here yet.
Number 6, Viva La Riyadh season. Now, UFC 320 is happening.
That is true.
I don't think anyone saw this coming.
But it's no longer Noche UFC, it's no longer in Mexico, and it's no longer the weekend before Mexican Independence Day. It's the pay-per-view of Theseus. 320 was meant to be the follow-up to the Saudi-funded $20 million Noche UFC at the Sphere last year, but we were told in late May that because of construction on the arena in Guadalajara, 320 would be moved to October, and Noche was now just a fight night that was a former Mexican because it was headed to San Antonio.
Hey, Dana.
Hey.
Former Mexican.
What's that?
Former Mexican.
You say former?
Yeah, I just say that.
How the hell does that work?
American now.
I'm sure ESPN will be thrilled to get a 600,000 view fight night card instead of one of their final pay-per-views of their 7-year deal. Fuck you, Mickey. You follow up your most expensive and over-the-top event ever with a fight night. Surprised it wasn't at the Apex. Who can tell the difference?
And when you're watching on TV, you can't tell if you're in a stadium or an arena or you're at the small but mighty Apex, which we have in Las Vegas.
But wait, 10 days after the move was announced, Dana made it official that he'd be promoting the Saudi-backed Alvarez-Crawford boxing match to be aired on Netflix the date 320 was originally meant to happen. Weird. How convenient that that date opened up. I'm sure their decision to essentially cancel the original UFC 320 had nothing to do with that. But it's okay, you can still watch both. Thank God they're not going to interfere with each other. I was worried for a second. Number 5, good fucking luck. If an MMA promotion never has an event, was it really an MMA promotion at all? It's one of those deeply philosophical questions, but one that most certainly has an answer in the Global Fight League, or GFL. You might remember them from their incredibly shit-tacular AI-generated draft night stream graphics that Jason did a whole video lambasting.
Standing for the Good Fighters League. No, it doesn't stand for that.
Really good. The GFL was yet another attempt, or rather, was going to be yet another attempt, at a team-based MMA league like the IFL, with benefits for the fighters that everybody dreams about. Health insurance, a 50-50 rev share, retirement.
Oh, is it
legit? It's happening?
Legit, yeah. So they're throwing a lot of money around, right?
I mean, truly fighter utopia. And even better, they got every single person you wanted to stop fighting on the roster. Tyron Woodley, Junior Dos Santos, Luke Rockhold, Frank Mir, Shogun Rua, Chris Weidman, Tony Ferguson. Please stop.
Who doesn't want to revisit Mount Rushmore again and again and again?
Their first event was going to be a two-nighter like WrestleMania, a true shit extravaganza, with such matchups as Tony Ferguson versus Dylan Dennis and Uriah Faber versus Renan Barão. Remember them? But a month or so out, the founder, Darren Owen, had some sad news for us. The promotion's financial backer backed out, and so the two-night GFL starting event was canceled. Who was this vital backer?
But who is actually behind this?
Our main investors are tech entrepreneur out of Silicon Valley. He's our partner on our app we're launching with the league. That's our big financer.
Sure, Jan. Owen says the league is still totally going to happen once that backer comes back. Number 4, Tony's Lament. The old Pandusky officially canceled 5 UFC events and ravaged a bunch of cards during that crowdless era, but no more devastating cancellation came than that of the original UFC 249, which was set for April in Brooklyn. It was to be headlined by the most cursed fight of all time, the 5th attempt at putting on Khabib versus Tony. But about a month out, things were getting dicey on the pandemic front, and New York State shut down all mass gatherings. The UFC vowed to find a new venue, but a few weeks later, another massive problem. Khabib was stuck in Russia due to travel restrictions, so that main event was off. But the UFC pressed on and was going to skirt the California Commission by fighting on tribal lands in the state. That was until Mickey Mouse rang.
Today we got a call from the highest level you can go at Disney and the highest level of ESPN, and the powers that be there asked me to stand down and not do this event.
UFC 249 has been canceled. All UFC events postponed indefinitely due to COVID-19.
Eventually, 249 would be revived a month later in Florida, where there are no rules, with a new headliner to boot. Number 3, sport killing. In 2012, the UFC just loved top-heavy events with paper-thin undercards, and 9 months into the year, it bit them in the ass. Despite injuring his knee nearly a month prior to the bout, Dan Henderson didn't inform the UFC until a week before his title challenge against John Jones that he couldn't compete. Oops. Over the next 2 days, the UFC scrambled to find a new challenger. The obvious choices of Machida and Shogun declined because the fight was too short notice. Other unspecified options were considered, with a last resort being middleweight Chael Sonnen, who did accept because why the fuck not? The problem was John Jones, under the advisement of his coach Greg Jackson, said no to short notice Sonnen. Not only was Chael a crafty one, but he was a teammate of Henderson and could have been training since the injury a month prior. With no options left, the UFC was forced to cancel the event, and they handled it just great. I mean, just really.
Now, I literally just bumped into Greg Jackson the other day, and I was kind of joking around about some of the things I said. I'll tell you what, I'll go on the record saying, this guy is a fucking sport killer.
Immediately afterwards, Chael went on a media tour with the gift that was given to him by Jones.
You know, I got a call yesterday, I would say about 5 p.m. from Dana White. You know, I just don't know why he won't fight me next Saturday. What else does he have to do? Is there like a wine tasting at the local racetrack or something I haven't heard about? I don't know. Maybe Dana didn't make it clear enough that he was willing to fly Jones out. Maybe John thought he had to drive. This was his big opportunity to get me on 8 days' notice. This was his big opportunity to slip one past the greatest icon this sport has ever seen, and he missed it. He missed it like a chump.
As a result of the cancellation, Sonnen would get a title shot and break John's toe. 2, promotion killing. When the UFC banned Affliction brand clothing in the octagon for being friends with Randy Couture, they teamed up with future president and future best friend of Dana White, Donald Trump.
We'll say these are tough-looking guys.
And do you think that it will take over the UFC?
It probably will. I mean, it's doing very well. All the fighters want to be with us, and I think it probably will take over.
And launched a late 2000s competitor promotion that saw stacked cards and massive paydays with an ambitious outlook for the future. To be fair, they had fucking Fedor, so I would have thought we were taking over the UFC as well. The problem is that none of the events had generated a profit, which they were hoping to turn around by their third show, headlined by Josh Barnett and Fedor, finally facing off after years of missing each other in Pride FC. Problem was, Josh fucked up and got himself suspended by California by testing positive for pumpers prior to the show. show. With seemingly no viable short notice opponents, Affliction had to cancel the event. But Tom Atencio, the promotion's former VP, gives a different reason why they couldn't save the card, and it sounds insane.
I remember correctly, it was because we didn't put card subject to change.
Oh, really? Okay.
Posters. Yeah. And because we didn't have that on the posters, I think it led the company to suits, potential lawsuits.
That can't be how that works. Maybe it is, though. I don't know. The canceled card canceled the promotion's entire existence, and they literally made up with the UFC and signed a partnership the next day after they closed shop.
Affliction, yeah. They're not in the fight business anymore. What these guys do is they make clothing, and we buried the hatchet, and now they're a sponsor again.
Number 1, Dark Matters. All right, better buckle up for this one. Man, let me tell you, nothing like your very first MMA event for your new promotion getting canceled because law enforcement is worried that a potential assassination could happen during the card. Everything I just said is real, but I mean, a tale as old as MMA, right? Dark Matter Fighting Championship, what a name, was supposed to have their very first card earlier this year in Queensland, Australia. But the local 5-0 told the promoter that they were worried Suman Mokhtarian, who you might remember from Tough 27 or his 2 UFC losses, if you're a complete degenerate, could be the target of some hitters. And I'm not talking about the Nick Diaz variety. So it's probably time for me to do that fucking Street Fighter hitter review. The Australian Top Team founder had actually already had someone try to take him out last year, disguised as a delivery driver at their actual gym.
Police are hunting for a gunman tonight to open fire on a packed gym in Western Sydney. People working out inside thought food was being delivered when the bike rider opened fire.
So maybe the police were on to something. The promoter was devastated that the event had to be scrapped and they would never have a first show. To be fair, Mokhtarian did tell police, I just won't go to the card, but they were worried that the word wouldn't get to the scooter riding assassins and they might show up anyway, so better to not risk it. And yeah, not sure any cancellation is ever going to top Agent 47 might show up, so we can't do the show. A massive thank you to our channel members for all their support. Hit the join button and become one yourself. Like and subscribe if I made you chuckle just once today. Leave a comment reacting to some of this madness. I love reading the feedback. And thank you so much for watching, guys. Be safe out there.